up here. Hi. My name is Jackie, and I am the co-owner of a Cape Town-based UX research company called How Might We? And the reason I'm talking to you here today is partly because we have been working with Google and with CX partners in the UK for the last 2 years to roll out the Google Mobile Labs program here in South Africa. So this is a global program that's been running across EMEA for the last 2 years. But we have so far, I think, done about 10 different mobile labs here in South Africa with these South African companies. Essentially, it's a really small research study, so actual interviews with customers, and then moving into a little bit of a mini design lab, all mixed into one. The other reason that I'm here talking to you about customer centricity today is because it really has been masquerading in many different kinds of acronyms throughout the last few years, a very big part of my career. While How Might We is relatively still very young, we're about 4 years old, we've been working in the UX and UX research space in South Africa for about 13 years. We knew it initially by its technical name. So do any of you remember HCI, human-computer interaction? When that used to be the thing. Then moving onto UCD, so user-centered design, and only actually really quite recently onto being called UX in the space. So 13 years ago, trying to sell a UX research or UX design project in South Africa was a very challenging task. Customers really liked the idea of being able to talk to their customers to get insight from who these customers are, but they really struggled to know what to do with those insights once they had them. How do we implement it? What do we do with this? Which also really meant that they struggled to figure out why they needed to pay for it along the way. Thankfully, we've come a really long way. So over the last 10 years, we've really seen this shift. It's not uncommon for organizations to have UX researchers, UX design teams in-house, like I'm sure many of you do sitting here today. And that's a huge win. So caring about what your customers think, what they want, what they need is a big win. And being able to respond and adapt to those customer needs in an ever-changing world from within the building, from within your organization, is really critical in being able to understand or being able to call yourself customer-centric. But it really is only starting to sort of touch the surface of what it actually means to be able to call yourself customer-centric as an organization. Like any big transformational undertaking, and we've been hearing about this sort of transformational aspect of it a lot today, we've observed the burden of change and how organization structures and processes, hierarchies and bureaucracies often make it really difficult for our customers to implement customer centricity into the very culture and almost the fabric of an organization. That's when it starts to get really hard. Hello. So unsurprisingly, Google noticed the same thing. They're pretty good at that. So in 2021, they commissioned a research study into this exact area. So they wanted to find out, they saw that people and companies really wanted to do the right thing, that they wanted to implement change, but that they got tripped up along the way, and either they never ended up implementing at all, or it took really long along the way. Google, hypothesized that companies that were better at this, better at changing, better at implementing, were driven by one common organizing principle. They were customer-centric. So, spoilers, they weren't wrong. The impact of customer centricity was really quite incredible to see. So, this research study was done across 110 different organizations across EMEA. And what they found was that 64% of organizations that participated in the study were underperforming in this space. The 36% who were performing well, their revenue was growing 9 times faster year on year than their underperforming counterparts. 9 times faster, that's huge. And not only that, these companies have higher employee satisfaction rates, they're able to make changes quickly, they're more likely to include qualitative research in strategic decision-making, more likely to effectively communicate those strategic direction or that strategic direction to their employees within their business, and more likely to embed UX or user researchers into delivery teams. So having a look at these stats today, and I know we've heard quite a lot of stats this morning. So Google, CX Partners, and How Might We are deeply invested in helping South African companies to really become more customer-centric and more successful. Which leads us to a question, and that is, how customer-centric are you? But are you really? I think that this is something that we've been asking ourselves for many years, and maybe this is a slightly different take on it, and I really encourage you to really look closely at how you would think about that. Off the back of the study that I was telling you about, Google have released a survey that any company can do. It is used to have a good, long, hard look at yourself as an organization, to really look at what is or be able to assess your customer centricity level as an organization, and then to be able to get actionable recommendations on how and where to improve. It's relatively quick to complete, so about 30 minutes. It's made up of about 79 multiple choice questions. So what happens is, once your questions are generated and a report is generated from that, it's sent to you automatically. So whether you're big or you're small, it really works really well. And to give you a bit of an idea of what you can expect to see inside that report, so firstly, it gives you an overall customer centricity score out of 6. This score is benchmarked against all other brands across other sectors, as well as benchmarked against other brands in your industry. So specifically in retail as well, it'll be able to show you your results in that space. The benefit of having a number is actually really great, right? So especially with something that's so abstract to think about, really having a number to reference back to work with your team and how you're going to improve this, maybe do it again in a couple of months' time, is really useful. And of course, anything less than 100% means we've got a little bit of work to do. So this rating is then also broken down against 5 different dimensions. So people, process, governance, facilities, and communication. And I asked you earlier about how customer-centric you are really, and I wonder if looking at these different dimensions, if you'd almost be able to self-assess yourself here. And just again realize that customer centricity touches far more parts of the business than just the design team. It really sits across a broad range. Some unlikely parts here, so obviously when we talk about facilities, we're not talking about only the buildings that we work in, the physical spaces. We're talking about how an employee experiences sort of work from a digital platform, how people carry out their jobs, where they get stuck, whether that's in a digital space or a physical space. So super interesting there. So for each of these dimensions, you'll also then get recommendations on areas to improve. If you are starting out at a really basic level, this isn't something super overwhelming where it's going to roll out the next 10 years for you. It'll be a really logical next step. And you don't need to run before you walk. But if you are a little bit further down that maturity level, it's going to really be able to help you with actionable next steps of areas you can improve in order to really look at that customer centricity part. A really good question to ask, who should do it or who should fill out the survey? Because it relates so much and so closely to business strategy, the higher up in the business you are, the person that fills this in, the better. We heard a really nice example of a company that almost called a board meeting, and a few people filled this out. So it's also another thing you might be thinking to yourself, it depends on who fills this out in my organization. And a way to get around that is to have a few and consolidate the outcomes. Like we said, it takes 30 minutes, so it is quite quick, but it does require some thought. So if you do set out to do the survey, put some time aside, do it properly, it'll really be worth it in the end. So your next steps from here, so the first one is to do the self-assessment. We have I'm not sure how useful QR codes are on a slide. I'm still yet to know this. I believe it's going to be sent out to you as well, so if you can't capture it right now, you will have access to this later. If you have a Google Industry Manager, share your report with them afterwards, so it'll really be able to give them interesting insights about the challenges you're facing and what the help that you need as an organization to go forward. And then for yourselves within your teams, prioritize, discuss, think about what you want to implement first. It's really easy to get a report. I think we're all sometimes guilty of this, to get a report and say, oh, that's nice, then put it away and never think about it again. And then the other thing is that there's partners to help. So you might think about bringing in partners to help in certain areas, so whether that's strategic areas or whatever you might need to do next. And like I said, the great thing about this is it's a point in time, that score now. So 6 months down the line, you can really start to see how you're moving that needle and moving forward. So thanks. That's it for me. I really hope you, I really hope that you go and find that link. It will be sent to you, like I said. Thanks.